This is Chili Willie, ECW, everybody's favorite homeboy, the ghetto superstar, and you are watching and listening to Stu's Podcast.
You're listening to Stu's Wrestling Podcast. It's time for British Wrestling's sharpshooter, your host, Stu Palmer.
A warm welcome, it is episode 82 and we have got current Ring of Honor star from the UK, Oxford to be more specific, Mr. Mark Haskins. Mark is a veteran of the UK circuit. He first began wrestling for the fantastic SWP promotion. It was one of my favourites growing up. Loved all their shows. Mark has been training through the pandemic as well. He's really enjoyed that. Physical and mental challenges for himself that he's put in place. You'll get to hear about that. Talk about him taking on Jay Lethal, Rey Mysterio. He's had so many great matches over the years. His time in Progress, when Progress was in its early embryonic stages as well. He spoke fondly about the guys there running Progress and where it is now to this day. To travel across the world doing what he likes to do with his wife Vicky Haskins, who he refers to as his best friend. He talks about his experiences at the Ring of Honor G1 Supercard that took place in Madison Square Garden, which WWE had a stronghold. That was their venue for many years. It was a sellout, as we got to see in 2019, and he was a part of it, and some great stories about that too. So, without further ado, my guest is Ring of Honor star, UK wrestling royalty in my mind and many others, Mr. Mark Haskins. Enjoy. My guest today, Ring of Honor superstar. He's actually wrestling royalty in UK terms as well. It is Mr. Mark Haskins. How's it going, Mark?
I'm doing great, thanks, mate. How are you?
All good. Absolute pleasure to get you on. As I said off camera, I have followed your career from the get-go. I remember you coming through at FWA. But in more current news with yourself, I know you signed on with Ring of Honor again in January. So how does it feel to sign on again with Ring of Honor? That'll be my first one.
It's great. I figured out the other day, I think I've actually been sat at home longer now than I've been currently active in Ring of Honor. So due to this big pandemic. So I'm looking forward to the day that I get to go back stateside and get back to doing what I love to do. But this past year has definitely been needed. I mean, I've been wrestling since the first day I started training was 17 years ago. So I've been doing this for a long while, and like the most time that I've had off in that time was maybe like 3 or 4 months, and that only happened twice. Do you know what I mean? So this has been collectively the most amount of time that I've had off from wrestling since I started, and just the difference that it has made just, physically and spiritually has been a lot. So it's been nice to have a rest, and it's been nice to test myself in different ways. Like I'm a guy who loves training, and it's been nice to be able to focus on that, and knowing that I'm going to come back to this game a completely different animal to what I left. So it's not been time wasted at all, but I'm also looking forward to getting back in that ring.
It's good to hear a bit of positivity on your end, because I know of wrestlers that have really struggled over the course of the last year or so. So it's quite sobering and nice to hear a positive side to it, Mark, on your end.
Well, like the thing that I realized early was it all comes down to your mentality. Do you know what I mean? Like if you know the saying, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many different ways to interpret the things that happen to you, and a lot of the time you can think of it in a negative way, or you can choose to look at it from a positive light. Do you know what I mean? Like those who are the people that get ahead in life are the people who try to look for the opportunity when there isn't one. Like rather than seeing a problem, they see here's a chance to fix something. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody's ever got anywhere by looking at all the negative things and just getting more and more down. And I've been one of those people. I've been miserable as hell like a ton of times. Do you know what I mean? And it's just not a mindset that I want to be in. It's something that I want to escape. So this past year I've just really put myself to the test, just trying different things, man. Like I feel like life is just about trying things out and seeing what kind of effects they have on you, you know? And this past year has allowed me to do that. Like, when was it? It was June 2020 that I took on a challenge by a guy called David Goggins, who's a former US Navy SEAL and pull-up world record holder at one point, and like ultra marathon runner. And his challenge was running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours straight. And it came to like a Friday morning, and I'd put it off for a while. And I finally thought to myself, right, I can either wake up Sunday morning and I can either think like, I can either be proud of myself and be like, yeah, I'm a badass, because I think anybody who can do that is unquestionably badass, right? So I was like, well, if I think that of them, what would I think of myself if I would have put myself through that? Now I can either wake up Sunday morning and be proud of the effort I've put in, or I can wake up Sunday morning and I can, just look at myself and be like, you're such a wimp, man. Do you know what I mean? And I can feel let down. And I was like, well, that's at that point, it was clear to me what I had to do. So sure enough, I went ahead, I did it. And just along the way, you learn so much about yourself. Like I find is this past year has been so sobering and been so intriguing to see how you can change your mindset and how that changes everything else in your life, right? Like towards the end of last year, before we went into another lockdown, a friend of mine and I started training at, I think it was 3:30 in the morning, right? In our gym. We've got a 24-hour gym. So I'd get up at 3 a.m. I'd go and train from 3:30 till 6 a.m. And the one thing I found there is that you do not make excuses at that time in the morning, because you have a choice of any excuse you want. I'm tired, I'm too cold, and the truth is that success waits for no one. Do you know what I mean? Like it's either up to you to get in there and hit a new personal best, or to really push yourself, or to go in there and accomplish whatever goal it is that you have. And when you find yourself in that place, you get yourself into this mindset where you're unstoppable. Do you know what I mean? Like you find yourself there where like either I picked that weight up today, or I'm going to go home and be upset that I didn't, hit the target that I wanted to make. And then I just realized how that carried over for the rest of the day. Like, I became so much more productive. I was so much, less grumpy around the house, I guess, even though I was tired. And then I think we had a lockdown. When was it? Around November time. And like, I didn't even end up setting an alarm most mornings, and just waking up and feeling like you don't have a purpose is just so deflating. It's just such a sucky feeling that like I hate it. And I think it got to the end of the first day, and I just had to like put myself under some kind of like horrible challenge like I've been doing. I just decided, how long would it take me to do 1,000 push-ups, right? And it took me about an hour. And I was at the end of it, I was like, I am so glad I did this, because it just it changed something in here, right? And this is the thing that I've really realized over the past year, is just using all these things as little mechanisms to change how it is that you look at yourself and how you view all situations, because everything can offer you a different answer. Like somebody who I've studied a lot over the past year is a guy called Wim Hof, right? Who's a breathing expert. He teaches you in regards to how breathing alone and can change your physiology in your body, and how it can be super healthy towards your overall health. And also, what was it? So he's done things like he's, ran marathons in the desert with no water. Like he's ran marathons in the Arctic in just a pair of shorts. Do you know what I mean? And he loves cold therapy. So I bought a whiskey barrel from a Scottish distillery, and it's out in my garden, and it's just full of cold water. And I throw ice in there, and I'll climb in there for anywhere between, and it can vary, because if it's cold, it's horrible. Like back in the deep depths of winter, like I had to break the ice to get into it. So like the most I got then was maybe like 5 minutes, right? Like, whereas in the summer, because it's nice and you're hot anyway, you can stay in there for up to 20 minutes at a time, but the water's going to be, the temperature is going to be higher. So, but doing little things like that, like I realized how you can get almost into this like meditative state, and how you can really focus on being able to push yourself through doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you know that you're going to have the benefit the other end of. And it's been the one thing that has kept me going through this entire pandemic, is just focusing on training, focusing on doing something different, and seeing what the effects of that are, like, and how that affects me mentally and physically for the rest of the day.
That's cool, man. Do you know what I'll take away? There was a bit of a pause there for me. I didn't think you were finished. Seize
I could talk for days, man.
seize the day, I would say there. Off the back of what you've just said. And I've been guilty of it from a personal standpoint. I've had mental health issues years and years ago. But total different mindset now, you know, getting up and things like that. I look back on it and think I wasted time. So I take a lot away from that, what you've just said. Yeah, absolutely.
There's been a lot of times where I've been miserable. I've been a culprit of focusing on the negative rather than focusing on the positive. And it gets you nowhere. Do you know what I mean? Like you can sit there and you can moan and you can be upset all that you want, but it will never get you anywhere. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like I've wasted too much time of my life focusing on negative aspects, and especially being a bit older now. I turned 33 this year, and, you know, like I said, like I've been in wrestling now for the past 17 years since I started training. 14 years I've had a career, and, you know, that time has flown by. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a young man's game. Like, I'm under, like, you know, no illusions that however much longer I have left of my career is also probably gonna fly by. So it's really up to me now to really be able to, like you say, kind of like seize the day, seize the opportunity while it's there. Do you know what I mean? And the thing that I think that people don't really realize is a lot of the time happiness is a choice. Do you know what I mean? Like if you know somebody cuts you up while you're out driving, right? Like, I'm such a culprit of this, of like just getting road rage where I'll be angry and upset, but then that can affect you for the rest of the day. And it's like, if you lost, say, like 10 cents, 10p out of your wallet, right? You wouldn't go and throw the rest of your money away. Do you know what I'm saying? So why the hell do we do it with our time? Do you know what I mean? Like, if one little thing upsets you, like, that can end up, you know, putting you in a bad place, and then people often reflect what it is that you give off. So it ends up being this essentially just this whirlpool where you're just going round and round in circles of you know, experiencing the same thing, not realizing that you have the power to change that. So it's been a real interesting time, just trying to be a lot more conscious of my own actions and just seeing how that affects myself and the people around me. And it's something that I'm definitely not gonna, you know, I definitely do not plan on losing going forward with the rest of my life.
That's cool, man. Well surmised there. Well surmised. Absolutely. Now back to Ring of Honor. Now I've been watching matches back, and you said to me you might remember more better than me. But yeah, Silas.
Mate, I get dropped on my head for a living, so I don't have many brain cells left. You know what I mean? But well, I'll try and do my best to remember what there was.
War of the Worlds UK at the famous Liverpool Olympia. Quite the venue here in the UK for boxing, wrestling. I know ROH have come over to Olympia many times. I watched the match with Silas Young, so it was your first match in Ring of Honor. Fantastic. I'm not blowing smoke here, Mark. There was a bit of everything. There's a bit of everything in the ring there. Mixture of styles. What can you remember from that first bout with Silas?
I remember looking at Silas and feeling like this is either gonna look like me versus my dad, or this is like me versus like my future self when everything's gone horribly wrong. Do you know what I mean? Bless him. I like Silas. Bless him. He's great. But no, it was great going out there because I loved this feeling, right? Like, especially like I don't know what it is. I feel like maybe because I'm a bit shorter in stature, like I'm only 5'7", do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always considered one of the smaller guys in wrestling because the majority of people, I mean, think of it like this. In America, like 6'1" is considered small. Do you know what I mean? So that's, you know, I dream of the day that I'm 6'1", do you know what I'm saying? But But like going into that match, like I had this feeling that just nobody expected anything out of me. And that's the feeling I love, because I love seeing the expressions on their faces change when you come back through the curtain afterwards. And yeah, it was just one of these moments where I felt like going into the back, like, you know, nobody really thought much. They were like, oh, this is just some local kid or whatever. Like a few of the guys knew me, but not really. And then you come back through the curtain and people are like, well, we did not expect that. Like, damn, okay, well, let's see what you can do. Do you know what I mean? And then from that point on, it started a relationship between myself and Ring of Honor for a few years, where every time they came to the UK, I was on the UK shows, and I just kept getting bigger and bigger opportunities with them. Yeah, Silas to start with, and then I remember at one point it was Crystal Palace. It was Vicky Haskins came out with me, and yeah, we ended up wrestling Jay Briscoe, who's considered one of the main guys in Ring of Honor. And then the next tour, I think I ended up winning the International Cup and then going on to wrestle Jay Lethal at Bethnal Green. So yeah, it definitely felt like they had some kind of interest in little old me, at least.
How was it with Jay Lethal? I think that's perfect to segue into that.
It was really, really hot, mate. It was horrible. From that point, I was like, did nobody put the aircon on in here? Like, it was boiling. And, like, Jay's one of the best in the world, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, yeah, so it was great. And, you know, you go out there and, you know, we ended up going, I think, over half an hour. And yeah, I mean, he's an awesome wrestler. He's a great talent. And I think that anytime you get an opportunity like that, you step into the ring with somebody who, you know, people know how good they are. That's up to you. If you don't look out of place, then what does that say about you? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you can go in there and go toe for toe for somebody who, you know, people consider great, then what does that make you? So it's always an opportunity to go out there and prove yourself. And that time with Jay was no different.
That's cool. I think also I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Lifeblood as well, the faction. I was absolutely made up when you came together, all you guys, Juice, David Finlay, Bandido. I'm trying to think, I'm missing one there. But
there was probably more. There was a lot of us to start with, and then, yeah, it just dropped away till it was just little old me.
I was made up with it, though, you know, when you guys formed. I know it's a couple of years ago now, but yeah, how has that been part of the faction for you, from your aspect?
Yeah. It was cool. Like, we didn't really anticipate it. Like, we kind of came together and we were looking at each other like, this is the most random group of guys, like, you know, that you could imagine. But it was cool because I felt like we all brought something different to the group. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I don't know. I guess like we all kind of like, you know, we all kind of refer to ourselves, we're like the Avengers, you know, we've all got our own special superpowers, and that's the way that we justified being a group. But no, it was great, man. And like yeah, I miss, you know, Juice and Finlay. Like they left soon after, but they were a lot of fun to be around, and it was great being in there with those guys. We had some real chemistry. You know, I'm gutted that it didn't go on for longer.
It was cool, man. I loved it, and I think, before we move on to another topic and come away from Ring of Honor, I want to ask you about the G1 Supercard. Obviously, that was a WWE mainstay venue, MSG. No other companies went in there. It sold out. There's 20,000. That was like WrestleMania weekend as well. But I was more so looking forward to that than I was WrestleMania. Yet again, I'm not blowing smoke, Mark, because I knew that show would just be amazing. How was that from your perspective, being at the famous Madison Square Garden?
It was great, man. Like, it's one of those venues that you say it to anybody and everybody knows who it, you know, what it is. And yeah, being a wrestling fan from the age of 9, like, it was a venue that I always wanted to be able to go out in. And yeah, it was awesome. Like, I have this weird thing that happens anytime that I have a big show, right? So I just step through the curtain and I just look around and think to myself, wow, there's a lot of people here. All right, on to work. And then, you know, you're back in the job. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's, yeah, it's one of these weird things where you just kind of look around. You're like, yeah, I've definitely done smaller shows than this. Do you know what I'm saying? And then you go to the ring and just have to crack on and do what you do. And it was just awesome. It was a great experience. Yeah, it was a bucket list moment. And yeah, I'm just kind of gutted because my wife came out with me and she was watching in the crowd. And after the match, I was like blowing kisses to her. And then like she told me later she was sat in a completely different like part of the building.
Oh, no, mate. Oh.
I hope I made some lucky fans night.
I'm sure you did. Yeah. I'll get on to Vicky a bit later, because that's amazing, you two being able to, you know, work together, working man and wife. But I will get back onto that, absolutely. I think maybe talk about now about the British scene, how it's changed over the years, because it was totally different. I know it's cliche, people say about it. I look at it from a fan perspective. You might look at it totally different, being a wrestler, being a worker. How has it changed from when you first got into to where it is now, the UK scene?
So when I started out, it was, so I started training in 2003. I was a fan of British wrestling for probably about a year before that, 18 months. And the first show that I went to was an all-star wrestling show at the Wyvern Theatre in Swindon, right? And then the next show I went to after that was, what's it called? Revival at Crystal Palace, right? The Tommy Boyd promotion. So it was ushering in this, it already felt like it was ushering in this new era, because I became a fan of the FWA. I, you know, started to watch their product and see guys like you know, Jody Fleisch, Johnny Storm, Doug Williams, I was a huge fan of those guys, and I loved going to the shows and, seeing them. And they were bringing in guys from abroad who, being a hardcore wrestling fan at that time, like I was, I knew about places like Ring of Honor, places like, TNA that weren't as big as what they ended up becoming. And it was great seeing guys like AJ Styles come in, or Jerry Lynn, or, Christopher Daniels, all these talents that had big names going on elsewhere. And then they came over to the UK. And I did a year of refereeing through 2005. And then my first year of actual wrestling was from 2006 onwards. So this was kind of the era of around when 1PW was bringing in crowds. So 1PW suddenly, within the space of like a month, like I ended up in this really bizarre opportunity where I joined a group of wrestlers called the Chavs. Pretty self-explanatory, right? And on the first night that I was a part of the group, one of the main guys who had these opportunities lined up for 1PW, and that ended up being injured. So I literally walked into this spot where it was like, okay, we need somebody to fill this spot. It's going to be you. So I think like my third match was for 1PW in front of like 2,000 people. Then like my fourth match was in like a steel cage match or something like that for, the FWA. And then it was just, it was bizarre. I literally went from like nothing to then like everything in such a short space of time. And it was one of these things where you just have to think on your feet and just try and adapt to the situation as, and learn as you go. And, you'll never feel ready for any situation that you're ever faced with. Do you know what I mean? But it's up to you. Like acknowledging that is kind of almost a step ahead, because at least, well, hey, I'm going to do the best that I can. And, having that acknowledgement also helps you adapt and prepare for it. Do you know what I'm saying? Or at least it did in my case. And I wanted to do the best that I could. So suddenly I end up in dressing rooms with guys like AJ Styles, Jerry Lynn, and the guys who had literally been going to shows to watch a few years ago were suddenly like, across the dressing room from me. So I was around guys like Samoa Joe, AJ Daniels, Kazarian and that. And it was this sudden reality check of like, oh, damn, like this is, my reality has changed quickly. You know what I mean? So it was great. But the British scene was very different because it wasn't all like that. Like you go somewhere else, like All Star Wrestling, right? When in 2006, they could offer you 30 dates in the month of June alone. They were running shows all the time. Like there were points in time where, because they had the Butlins gig, and then they picked up additional camps on top of that, you could end up wrestling. I think like the most I did was like 7 shows in 3 days, right? So you end up just getting all this experience and like learning and adapting in front of different crowds. And the crowds that go to Butlins are just people on holiday that want some kind of entertainment, so that you have to go out there and perform in a completely different way than what you do to say like a crowd that I think back in the day one of the hot crowds that we would go perform in front of was in Orpington, right? So you had to learn how to adapt and how to change. Also around that time you had Premier Promotions based down in Worthing with John Fremantle, which was very conventional British wrestling. So you still had the round style, right? And then you had like a lot of the old guys who were still kicking about, guys like Steve Gray, Superstar Mal Sanders, Johnny Kidd, so you're in, once again, a completely different environment. And it's definitely helped me learn how, like from all these different people, having the influence of the Americans who came over, from having the influence from the British guys who were on their way out, to having the influence of being in front of at the time the current British guys who were learning how to perform in a more theatrical style, because the majority of venues that they ran were theaters. And then you're in front of like also crowds as well that are a little bit more diehard wrestling fans that want to see those kind of back and forth, and I hate the term indie matches, but that's kind of how it's been known to be, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of, it's getting all this different kind of experience along the way, whereas nowadays I just don't feel like the scene really has as much of that at all. Do you know what I mean? Like, nowadays things are a lot more similar, and especially in the past year, like who even knows what kind of business it is that we're going back to. It's going to be a completely different business. It's going to be quite a shock to the system, I think. And especially as well now, I acknowledge the fact that I'm one of the older guys in the dressing room. Like this is a young man's game, like I said before. Like there's going to be a lot more of the younger guys coming through, so it's really going to be a very different landscape, I feel, when things resume.
Absolutely. I think just going back to All-Star as well, testament to Brian Dixon all the number of years, you know, he's been running the promotion, you know, and you hear from guys like Daniel Bryan, who've worked from a lot of the Americans came over years ago. So it's a testament to him, you know, running shows, as you say, and the frequency of shows and doing that circuit. And, you know,
it was insane. Like, 10, 15 years ago, it was very, very different to what it ended up being now. And it was, you could literally just get picked up for work. Like, you know, you might give him a call towards the end of the week and say, have you got anything this weekend? And then suddenly you're on a run of shows for like the next week. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's kind of the way that things were. Whereas, like, I don't know of any promotions at the moment where like you really have that. You know, and the thing as well, though, like, even though you could make money back in those days, it wasn't exactly like, you know, a lot of money that you could get by on. Do you know what I mean? And it was great if you were, you know, young and single or what have you, because you had like, you know, very few commitments. Whereas now, obviously, you know, I'm a parent, I'm a married man. Like, you know, I've, you know, got a house, I've got pets, you know, I've got to, you know, take care of. So I'm in a very different position now. But yeah, I remember hearing of like, you know, so Butlins, for example, is just completely theatrical. They want to boo the bad guy, they want to cheer the good guy, right? It's like, it was like going back in time to the early 90s where you had like the cartoony kind of era of wrestling, right? And you just see these matches that you just felt like they were just like a waste of the match, right? There was a match where it was like Doug Williams and Daniel Bryan versus Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm. And in front of any other audience, you'd think that would be an insane match, right? That would be incredible. And instead, you're just seeing like Daniel Bryan, like, you know, storm around and everyone's chanting chicken at him, right? And you're just like, this is such a waste of what could be a phenomenal match. Not to say that it wasn't good, but it was just like one of those ones where you're like, this could have been so different. You know what I mean?
But the environment they were in that day.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. But then, you know, times change. And the thing, so within the past, I think from like 2015 up until 2019, wrestling changed again in this country, where you could pick up, you know, midweek work and it would be a lot different, but it was like wrestling a different style. Do you know what I mean? Like, guys could make a better income from it because then they had, you know, the addition of merchandise sales and such. And also with the addition of social media, it allowed people to reach out to a new audience that otherwise people wouldn't have been able to reach out to, I think, previously. So everything's temporary, everything evolves, and, you know, it's going to be interesting to see where the wrestling business goes within the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely 100%. I think I'd like to speak to you about PWG, the Battle of Los Angeles 2016. I know we're going back a bit. I know you've hit your head many times, but just some memories from that, because that was like, that's got a staunch fan base. You know, we got the tapes years ago and the coverage over here. But how was that for you?
It was great, man. It's, I love California. Like, I'm a huge fan of bodybuilding. So it was when I got out there, and the first thing I think I did was I went to Gold's Gym in Venice, and I went to Muscle Beach, and I was like, I just had to go to these places, and I just had to train. And it was like, I don't know, I felt kind of bad because the shows almost became like secondary to me, because I was like, Gold's Gym's here, I'm going. Do you know what I mean? But it was great. Like, you know, the traffic out there is horrendous. I remember that much. Like, you know, going to the show, it would take you an hour and a half, and then because you're going at sort of rush hour, and then on your way back, it would take 20 minutes. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, what happened? Yeah. But I mean, it's so bizarre because, and this is why I love PWG, because you walk into this venue and in your head you've built it up and you're like, right, this is PWG. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is, you know, the company that, you know, really got guys places and, you know, has like such a buzz to it. And you walk into this venue and you're like, this is it. And you're like, there's just such a crappy rundown like hall, right? And you go into this dressing room that's about the size of a broom closet, right? And you look around and there's some of the best wrestlers in the entire world all crammed into this little space trying to get dressed and what have you, and you're like, what is going on? It's like just the most bizarre concept. And then you get the fans in, and then they put on this incredible show, and then like you come back and once again you're just in this little space, and you're like, wow, like, you know, when you build it up in your head, you're like, oh, they're gonna have like decked out dressing rooms and like, you know, it's gonna be amazing. And it's not. It's just, I mean, you know, like the crappiest little hall, and that's why I loved it. Like, the air conditioning I think was broke. or at least it definitely didn't work to the extent that you wanted it to. You're in California, so it's boiling hot. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get out there and you're like, you know, the second you walk through the curtain, you're already sweating and out of breath, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to put in a real shift here. Do you know what I mean? Because you got like 20 minutes or however long to get through. But it was an awesome experience. I'm really grateful that I got to do it before they closed the Legion Hall down and moved elsewhere. But it was great, man. It was real great.
How many people did they get in that venue, Mark? You know?
I'm terrible at math, but I would guess anywhere between 400 to 500. But I mean, with all that body heat in there, it's just it's a lot. But then this is the madness thing. Like, I remember like going outside into the car park afterwards to cool down. I look around. I'm like, oh, there's Ronda Rousey. Okay, and so like I go over. I'm like, and I heard that she didn't like to having a photo taken with anyone. And I was like, I'm getting a photo with Ronda Rousey. Do you know what I mean? So like I go up to her. I'm like, oh, hey, photo, yay, cheers, thank you, bye. Before like, you know, she would flying armbar me or something. And so I got my picture with Ronda Rousey just so I could show everyone that she met me. And then years later, she ended up using one of my moves at WrestleMania. So I was like, oh, wow. So she came to the show. She was lovely. Allowed me to get a photo because she was stealing my stuff. Great.
Full circle, that, Mark. Absolutely. I was there at WrestleMania 31 with her and Rock when Rock got her out the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my days. Just like Stephanie and Triple H. Just absolutely mind-boggling. Like, you had all them matches and quality matches, but that moment, oh, my days. Not to think further down the road she'd be employed by them. I thought it was just a one-off.
Yeah, it's a funny old world, eh?
Just incredible. I think perfect. Now, going back into the UK, you worked with Progress for many years. Progress has done so much for the UK scene. Just some memories at Progress over the years you've worked there, because I'm a big fan of Progress.
So I remember getting an email in 2012, I think it was. And this was around a time where nobody ran London because everybody thought like, London's a dead market. Like, you know, nobody's going to put on wrestling shows there. And it was just John and Jim at the time. And they dropped me an email and said, we were going to run a show in London. Would you like to be involved? I don't even think I replied to it. I was just like, good luck. Do you know what I mean? And then from the first show, I remember hearing like that it did really well. And it just seemed to have this buzz about it. I was like, oh, damn, like I've never been so glad to be proven wrong in my life. Do you know what I mean? And the first time that I got brought in and met them, like I told them the story. I was like, you know, like fair play to you guys. You guys have managed to make it happen. And I think they always appreciated that. So, it was great. And it was great to see it go from strength to strength. You know, it went from being in front of at the garage in front of maybe like 300-400 people. Then it ended up being in the ballroom where they were drawing, you know, say like 600-700 people month to month. And it just continued to grow and to grow and to grow. And I feel like it was a testament to everybody involved at the time, because when I refer to Progress, I'm not just referring to the people who run it. It's also the talent that were there at the time. And, you know, there was some insane matches and just a lot of guys who were all getting hot around the same time and really building their stock up. Do you know what I mean? And it was just awesome to see this small time British company make big waves in the wrestling world. You know, no other British company has had the success that they have had, you know, running places like Wembley SSE Arena, you know, running tours in North America, being, you know, part of tours out in Canada. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this was something that, especially coming in around the time that I did to the business, this was something that like you never would have contemplated could have happened. And like it ended up happening. And that was, it was just nice to see hard work pay off in the right way, and, you know, be able to think that, there is something over here for, you know, young wrestlers coming up to go into. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was an exciting time to see, okay, like, you know, it makes you start reevaluating, like, well, what is possible? Do you know what I mean? Like, let's start really dreaming big and thinking, where can we take this? So it was just the right people at the right time coming together and making something happen.
I love Jim Smallman doing the MCing at the start. You know, he ramps up the crowd. As much as I like watching the matches and stuff like that, I loved all that, like when he was doing his compare bit, then he does the ring announcing. But, you know, brilliant, you know, just something a bit different at the start of the show before you guys go out there.
And I think like, that's the thing, is like, people don't think outside the box. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially with the type of venues that they would run would always be punk rock venues, right? So like, if you send a guy in a suit out there, like, you're almost alienating him from the crowd, because it's so very different to what anybody going to that place will, you know, anticipate, because, you know, the venue does matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, the type of venue that you run will dictate what kind of crowd you draw. If you run a show in a theater, people are going to expect boo yay, because they're at a theater. You know, you go to the theater not to see the best piece of like acting per se, but, you know, a lot of almost like pantomimes where you go and you, like, you know, you want to cheer the goodie, boo the baddie. Do you know what I'm saying? Whereas like, if you run a punk rock venue, you're going to get people, punk rockers turn up. You don't get families turn up at like the Electric Ballroom. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's people with like-minded people who go there, who, you know, want to see that. So if you have somebody go out there who's you know, who looks like them, you know, baseball cap on or whatever, you know, like just a t-shirt, jeans, goes out there, has a chat with his mates, like, he made you feel like he was, like, he wasn't just a ring announcer, he was a host. Do you know what I mean? But he always made you feel like he was your mate. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he'd just sit and he'd talk to you and he'd have a chit chat, and then he'd be like, all right, well, let's all enjoy some wrestling together. And then, like, you know, out would come the wicked match that would happen. He'd be like, oh, that would be good. You know, like, crack on, make a few jokes. Like, I really feel that, like, I don't know this for sure, but like, I feel like Progress is going to struggle not having Jim there as much, because I feel like he really added something to those shows that people don't really anticipate. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, and it's, you can always tell when somebody's doing something right, because you'll get so many imitations. So turning up to different shows throughout the country and seeing people think, well, I've got to be like that now, but not taking into context that, you know, you can't, you know, dress like Jim Smallman and try and be like Jim Smallman and then think that you're going to be seen anything other than a Jim Smallman wannabe. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's being the right person and being the right character in front of the right crowd that is going to help transcend what it is that you do. And I feel that, like, Jim just smashed it on the head. He smashed the nail on the head. And yeah, I'm going to miss not seeing him, you know, be doing that as much as he was.
I'd love to go to. I've been to the Manchester Ritz. I know Progress run that. That's probably the closest show they run to here, because I'm on the North Wales coast. But if they do run the Ritz again, I'm going to get tickets, because I've been to gigs. I've been to gigs there over the years. Great venue, oldie worldy. But when I've seen shows from the Ritz, just, you know, raucous. So yeah, I need to catch Progress in person. Absolutely, be interesting.
You've never been to a Progress show?
No, but I've done. Mark,
what have you been doing?
Oh, Mark, I go over the States and watch it more than crazy. If you know, that's me in a nutshell. But yeah, you know, I've been to TNT in Liverpool. I'm quite friendly with a few of the guys who run that. So yeah. I do. I need to get to a Progress show. Terrible, absolutely awful, woeful.
And you have missed out on like some awesome shows.
It's all well and good. It's all well and good watching it on demand afterwards. I know, like, you've got to be in. You've got to be in that environment.
It's not the same.
No, mate. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm with you 100% on that. I think I'm going to talk to you now. There's a match. I think it must have been 2018. It just like jogged my memory as we've been talking. You face Rey Mysterio. I know 5-star wrestling kind of just went. And Mr. Hinkles, there was a lot of bad press and what have you. But you fought Rey Mysterio on the card. He put together some good cards, but I think he was just a bit unrealistic booking and promoting and stuff like that. But
they were a fun few weeks, though. They were great.
I tuned in on Free Sports, I think it was, or Premier Sports. I used to watch him. And the missus like, what, you watching another promotion? I was like, yeah, 5-star. He's doing all the arenas. But yeah, sorry, Mark.
No, I love 5-star, man. Like, it was great. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like maybe like when things get too professional and too kind of like stuck in your way a bit, it's like, you know, it's fun when things are, you know, when you're throwing a curveball every once in a while. And like 5-star was that, you know what I mean? Like, I really enjoyed their shows. Like, I remember the first show I did for them, I was part of I think it was like a 5-man or 6-man elimination match, right?
I remember it well, mate.
Originally, we were set for like maybe half an hour, 45 minutes is how long we had to go. And then about like 10 minutes before the show started, we got moved to on first and we had to cut the match down to 12 minutes, right? So yeah, it was fun. Like, I love these challenges. It's like, okay, this is a challenge now. Like, I haven't been faced with this before. Like, yeah, like I get excited. Once again, it's looking for that opportunity, right? Like, and trying to see it as like, I'm not going to get stressed out here. Like, a match is going to happen. It might be good. It might not. Do you know what I mean? But either way, something that hopefully resembles wrestling will occur. So, yeah, it was great. Like, I'm sure not everybody shares my optimism in regards to the curveballs that they got thrown, but it was a lot of fun. Like, I remember, and you know what, I know there was a lot of bad press in regards to Dan and that, and I appreciate that he really tried. And he I remember like after the first week he doubled my wage without me asking, and I was like, wow, like I appreciate this, man, but like, are you sure? Like, I've never had a promoter like willingly pay me more. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I was like, this isn't gonna last. Like, but it was fun while it did. It was I'm gutted that it fell short when it happened, because I felt like it was, once again, if you had the right people in control of it, or just even people helping out, I feel like it could have gone a lot further than what it did. But it gave me the chance to wrestle guys like Rey Mysterio, like you said. So that was a fun match. And going out to the ring with Rey, he was somebody who I grew up watching, and it was great being in the ring with him. He's a great dude.
It's mad how he he's had to change his style over the years. I know he's had bad injuries and things like that. Just incredible, the longevity.
You'd be surprised, though. You'd be surprised.
Still,
like, who's done it all, right?
Yeah.
And like, still, we get to the ring, and he still wants to do all this stuff. Like, he still wanted to like do crazy stuff that I've seen younger people be like, well, I'm getting on a bit, I can't do that anymore. And there's Rey Mysterio doing like wheelbarrow springboard, like Hurricane Rana, arm drags, whatever the hell. And you're like, damn, man, like that's where I want to be, like at that point in my career. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the sense of like just having that mindset that like no matter what age you get to, you're still gonna do the best that you can. Do you know what I mean? And that was something I felt like I took away from Rey, was like, he was, lovely dude. He knew how to conduct business. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like he was still somebody, like, I remember we got to the back afterwards, and he was like, man, you could have laid it in a bit more. Like, I like that stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, go ahead. And I was like, really? Like, everybody else has been moaning for weeks of like, oh, Skins, you know what I mean? Like, you're a bit solid. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not stiff. Do you know what I mean? And Ray's like, no, man, bring it. Give me your best. And I'm like, okay, I will. So, it was cool being in the ring with him, man. It was, it was a real great experience.
I can only imagine. I've watched him since, just obviously didn't see him in ECW, but then WCW and all that. And like, I know it's cliche again. The matches don't date. You can watch them matches from like 96, 97. And they still hold. They'll hold it. They'll hold it forever and ever. Fan perspective.
Fire is still burning in Rey, man. That fire is still there. Like, cool. It is not gone out at all.
It's cool seeing him and Dominic together now as well. Tagging as well. That's I think that must be the ultimate for them to being able to work together and tag together. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the long run with that. But yeah, cool hearing about that, man. Absolutely. I'm going to ask now, what would be a dream match for you to have? Because I know you've wrestled thousands and thousands of matches and you've wrestled some of the best. What's a match you haven't had that you'd love to sink your teeth into and would be a challenge, as you like a challenge?
So I had one dream match, and unfortunately it'll never happen, and that was Eddie Guerrero, right? Because when I mentioned earlier that I went to a British Revival in 2002, I think it was, and he was there. And, a friend of mine I'd met through, we went to school together. Like, he basically got tickets to it, and he was like, do you want to come? Like, there's going to be Eddie Guerrero, and there's going to be Grandmaster Sexay, right? And they did this meet and greet before the show, which we got to go to. And I was queuing around the ring to meet Eddie, and I remember I had these two action figures, right? Like both of Eddie. And like, as I walked up to him, I didn't know what to expect. I thought like, he's probably going to be like a real arrogant, like SOB or whatever. And he just looks at me and he goes, hey, this nerd looks familiar, looking at the action figures. And I'm like, oh. And like, I hand them to him, and you just felt like, when everybody says who's met him, like, you just felt this warmth, like they were not lying. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just, I remember him being one of the nicest guys like that I ever met. And from that point on, I was like, damn, like he left an imprint on me in the sense of like, I felt like, yeah, like you never want to meet your hero and your hero to be a dick, right? Do you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, like anybody that ever, wants to meet me or like, takes the time to go out their way to, come and get an autograph or whatever, I'm always going to, greet them with a smile. And I'm always going to be like, the nicest guy that like I can be, because they're the people at the end of the day. Without their support, we have nothing. Do you know what I mean? And I hate seeing people who get too big of their boots and think like that they're too big for whatever. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Do you know what I mean? Like, like appreciate the people who support you, because without them, there is nothing, right? You have got nothing. You're out of your job. So, I remember Eddie being just one of the nicest guys. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, man, if I ever got to wrestle, like he'd be the guy that I'd want to wrestle, because he was the guy that I met as a fan. So it would be nice to come full circle and be able to, wrestle him as a performer. And obviously, unfortunately, that'll never happen. But I'd like to think that at least I took something on board from the brief time that I, met him and that. And I'll definitely carry on doing that for the rest of my days.
How about a current talent, if you can pick one, if you can? I know that's putting you on the spot there, because I'm sure. I
don't know, man. I've wrestled almost everybody that I've wrestled. I'd like to see some, in a strange way, I guess I'd like to see some new talent coming through with that fire, like that fire in their eyes. This is the thing, right? Is like, I feel that, especially in recent generations, like, and I don't want to sound like that old guy now, but like I feel like some of that fire and that aspiration is kind of gone. Do you know what I mean? Like when I started out, I feel so old saying this, like back in my day, do you know what I mean? But like when I started, so I was training in the gym, say 4 or 5 mornings a week, right? So I'd get up at around 7, I'd go to the gym, train from 8 till 9. I'd go and work in a dead end job from 10 till 5. I'd then go and train in a ring from 3 till 9 in the evenings. That happened, say 3 till 9 twice a week. And then from like, say, I'm not 3 till 9. What am I talking about? 6 till 9, twice a week. And then from 6 till 8, once a week. And then at weekends, I'd be out at shows. And if I wasn't on the show itself, I'd be there and I'd be helping out. And I'd be putting up the ring. I'd be, doing anything that they needed help with. I'd be driving people to and from the shows, because I knew that if somebody didn't show up to the show, you've got more of a chance of getting involved if you're already in through the door than if you're, sat at home, like, a couple of hours away. So I do everything that I possibly could to try and make it as a wrestler, right? Like I did not have a social life from the age of 18 till 23, right? Like I was just so head down in the business. And I'm not saying that it has to be that way. I'm not saying that everybody has to do that. But if you gave me the green light and told me to go out there and, and wrestle, like I would go and I would find whoever it was in the dressing room, and I would ask them like, hey, do you mind watching my match? And like, giving me some feedback. And like, I still do that to this day. Do you know what I mean? Like I was on a show a few years ago with Shinsuke Nakamura before he went to the Fed. And I was like, hey, what other opportunity am I going to get for him? I've never been in a dressing room with him before. Like, he's one of the best in the world. If anybody can tell me how to be better, it's him. So like I went and spoke to him, and sure enough, he watched my match. And, I think he was on directly after me, and he ended up taking a knock in the match. So I wasn't even going to talk to him, because I was like, he's kind of dazed. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's got more important stuff to worry about right now. But like, sure enough, he came and found me and was like, oh, like, I think I remember some of your match. Like, here, let me give you some feedback. And, I appreciated that. And like, that's the thing that I feel like a lot of people don't like to do anymore, is that I feel like it's almost like they feel like they look weak by asking for feedback or asking for advice, or even like asking, hey, do you mind watching this and giving me some, some opinions? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it is. I feel like people almost expect this to come to you by doing the bare minimum, because for some reason, like, people seem to think that it's cool to not care, right? Like, I care. The only reason why I've got anywhere is because I care. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's been a ton of people who have come through the doors of training centers and that were way more talented than I was. Do you know what I mean? That, like, you know, had natural gifts. They you know, had wicked physiques. They could, you know, jump ridiculously high, way more athletic. And the only reason why I'm still here is because I had a grit and determination that I was not going to let this game defeat me, right? And that, like, I was going to do everything that I could possibly do to be the very best that I could. And I feel that too often, like, I don't see that same kind of like hopes and aspirations in a lot of people. Do you know what I mean? Like, people almost kind of just expect it to come to you. And that's not, from my own personal experience, that's not how it happens. Like, if you want this, you have to work your absolute ass off to be able to get it. Like, how many wrestlers are there in the current climate of things? Do you know what I mean? Like, how many wrestlers are there in the entire world? You are fighting for spots against everybody. Do you know what I mean? And if somebody's going to take an opportunity on anybody and they've got a talent pool of like, okay, let's give one of these kids a shot, like, you've got, how many other people do you have to compete with? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is competition. Like, this is, you know, it's not competition in the sense of what you do out in front of the audience isn't like an actual sporting competition, but you are competing with everybody for the opportunities that you get. And I just feel like, yeah, that there's not necessarily that kind of fire in a lot of people who go out there and really actively try to push themselves and really try to, you know, do the best that they can to make the biggest splash that they can. But look, nobody ever got anywhere in this business by half-arsing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody who's been anywhere or anybody who's been anything has gone out there and worked their absolute behind off to get to the spot that they're in. So the real opportunity is for those who you know, who want to be the next people. Like I said, everything is temporary. The time will pass regardless. The next 5 years, you could either be in a way better position than what you're currently in, or you could be in the same position that you're in. Either way, like, it's your choice which you do. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, get out there. And if you do want to do something better, if you do want to be somewhere else, if you do want to be on the next level up, then make it happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is literally it, is just go out there and apply yourself the best that you can, you know, like, and I feel that just maybe that mindset isn't felt by everybody, but it's definitely a mindset that is either going to cost you or it's going to make you. So choose which one you want it to be and then just do it.
I think just going back for that, I was going to ask you about tips for young guys, but you've just encompassed it there. That was going to be one of my questions. But also, I think that you say, you know, Shinsuke Nakamura backstage and etiquette, but then I hear of people who I've interviewed over the last 2.5 years, guys, you know, in the business, people don't ask the questions to people, you know, to guys that have been in the business for years. That was something I took away from that. Go and speak to the guys.
It's surprising, right? Like, if you had one of the best wrestlers in the world in the same dressing room as you, like, that doesn't happen all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, I've shared a locker room with Nakamura maybe once or twice. It was over one weekend and we had, I think, 2 shows. Do you know what I mean? So you're potentially never going to get that opportunity again. Do you know what I mean? Like, if he's considered one of the best in the world, why wouldn't you ask his advice? Do you know what I mean? Like, if that's where you want to be, then why wouldn't you ask for advice? Do you know what I'm saying? It's, you know, just never think that you're too good for something. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, always be humble and always know that there is something else that you could learn. Do you know what I mean? Like, speak to people. Do you know what I mean? Like, go and, you know, find out, like, okay, so if you're in a position that I want, how did you get there? Like, what did you have to do to get there? Like, I want to know, because I want to be able to put the rungs in the ladder to be able to climb it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, figure that out. Like, don't think that, like, you know, just miraculously one day you're going to wake up and everything's going to be great, because waiting has never got me anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, and going out there and actively pursuing things, like, you know, and if I was to give advice to young wrestlers, is just, you know, keep your mouth shut and your eyes and your ears open. What that means is, you know, talk less and try to understand more. Like, listen to people. Like, you know, why is it that somebody is great? Like, go and learn from that person. If you had, say, Bill Gates or Warren Buffett, right? Like, you know, if they were going to talk to you about money, why wouldn't you go and listen to them? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're people who have, like, huge wealth. It's the same with wrestling. If somebody's one of the best wrestlers in the world, why wouldn't you ask for their opinion? Hey, can you give me some feedback? Hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? What is it that got you to where you are? Do you know what I mean? Like, they are the people who know. Do you know? So, like, it's bizarre that people don't take those opportunities much more and, you know, try to find out, like, you know, what it is that it takes to get to those spots. Do you know what I mean? Like, because the greats know how they got there, and that's what makes them great. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, you know, go and speak to these people. Like, the worst thing that can happen is when you ask somebody for advice and they've got nothing for you, and that's such a deflating experience. I remember I was Kurt Angle told me he watched one of my matches once, and I was like, "Do you have any advice?" And he's like, "Nah." And I'm like, no, like, tell me something. Like, I can pick out on myself, like, okay, I think I did this wrong, I did that wrong, I did that wrong. Like, never let that, like, never think that you're too good for anything, because that's the moment that you're gonna find there's gonna be like that break in your armor. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you think that you can't learn anything more, like, the game's over for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, always be adapting, always be thinking, okay, what can I do differently the next time that, you know, you do something, and don't be afraid to try things out as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, for the most part, like, you know, people don't pay as much attention to wrestling as what we think they do. So, like, you know, like, you can go out there and try something differently all the time. Like, take something and think, okay, if these are the three things that I want to establish, you know, how can I do them differently? What does it, you know, play around with it, play around with the formula. Don't be afraid to change and adapt. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, take the basics and take, you know, things that like the veterans would say, like, okay, well, you know, we did this way, but then try and adapt that to like a new age way of thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like, it works for some reason. Like, standard human psychology hasn't changed that much in the past 100 years. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, you can go out there and find how certain things work for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's always about trial and error and seeing, you know, applying something, seeing if it works, seeing how you could do it differently, seeing if that works, and then really knowing, you know, really understanding what it is that you do best and how you can apply yourself in different ways. But yeah, my basic advice would just be, just never stop learning, and just always keep trying to learn that next thing that you can add to your, you know, add to your repertoire. You know what I mean? Like, I did 2 years of I went and studied performing arts for 2 years. I got out of school, I did 2 years of performing arts college, because there's a theatrical side to wrestling. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've always, from the age of 15, I've worked out every week, like not every day, but every week, like, because I know that this is physical. You know what I mean? Like, I've always worked on my cardio. Like, you know, I've been for runs, like, even lately, like, I'll go for runs in the middle of the night. Like, I'll run through forests near my house, because I want to confront fear, and I want to, like, not let it overrule me. And it's understanding all these little things that you can do. Like, you can always be better. You can always be better than you were yesterday. And if you're not trying to be better than you were yesterday, then you're going to stay in the same place, and you're not going to be anywhere like different today or in 5 years' time. Like, always be learning how to adapt yourself in a different way. A few years ago, I got a qualification to become a personal trainer, because inevitably I want to start my own training school at some point, and I want to be able to train people, but I want to be able to do it in a way where nobody else has done it in this country before, because there is a lack of understanding in regards to how you can apply sports science to wrestling, right? What we do is very physical. No, it is not necessarily a competition, but what your body goes through is still a lot to endure. So you need to understand how you can apply yourself in certain ways, like understanding, you know, injuries, how you can deal with them, you know, understanding what's going to help you in certain regards, what exercises are going to help your muscles become conditioned to a certain movement. And, like, you know, understanding, like, where sports science is now is so far beyond what, you know, what we would have contemplated 5-10 years ago. I watched a documentary the other day where I think it was one of the Generation Iron movies, right, where they show these people in a lab in America where they're like, we can figure out where there's going to be an injury on this person's body just by watching them squat, because, you know, the knee might bend this way, that's going to lead to this potentially tearing, this, you know, being an issue. You're then going to overcompensate for it with muscles on the other side. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so far advanced and so far along now. I feel like, you know, if you would be able to apply that to wrestling, like, you would create just such a different level of performer. But it all starts from in here. It all starts from having that burning desire of wanting to be the best that you can and applying yourself to your absolute until you reach your full potential.
Perfectly surmised again, Mark. Like, life lessons there, not just, you know what I mean, coming away from wrestling as well. No, I'm sure the listeners and viewers of this episode take so much away from that. I think coming to the end now, guys on the road away from their families, you hear about it all the time, but you've been on the road with your wife Vicky for many years. How has that been for you two being together on the road? Because you don't hear about it, you don't hear about that, it doesn't happen, but you've had that where you've both been on the road together. So yeah, how's that been over the years?
It's been great. I mean, she's my best friend, so if I have a day off, if I think to myself, okay, well, where would I want to be in the world? It's with her. Do you know what I mean? So, and yeah, that has cost me greatly before. Like, I remember, so around the time of the Madison Square Garden show, the week before, we were in Baltimore, right? So I flew home. I think I flew home the Monday night, got back Tuesday around midday, and then had to fly out Thursday morning for the Madison Square Garden show. So I literally came home for a day and a half, and I was like, well, look, I want to have dinner with my kids. I want to have dinner with my wife. Like, I want to, be here with you guys. Otherwise, I'd be miserable sat in a hotel room somewhere halfway across the world. And, yeah, there's been a lot of times, like, it's not always easy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember being in Canada at one point, and, my kids were a bit younger and they missed me because I've been away for a few days. And, like, seeing your kids cry because they miss daddy and not being able to give them a hug is like a really sucky feeling. It's horrible. Do you know what I mean? And, yeah, it really hits you. And like, you kind of feel guilty because while you've obviously got this wicked opportunity, and something that I try to do a lot more, and especially in recent years, was, you might fly out to, say, like, I've been to Italy a ton of times, right? I have no idea what Italy looks like other than the inside of a venue and the inside of a hotel and an airport, and that's about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so a few years, like in the past few years, I've definitely tried to make more time to actually stay an extra day or something just to go out and experience, the area more. And yeah, like, that can put a strain on the rest of things, the relationships that you have with your kids and your family back home. But it's been great that Vic and I have been able to travel together, and we've got to do a lot of, we've had a great time. Like, it's nice to have time where it's just her and I, because while having the kids is incredible and being a parent is awesome, it can just be draining, like in the sense of, like, there is no relaxation time whatsoever, right? Like, when you have kids, like, you are constantly like on, trying to stop one of them from, doing something, or, trying to sort out whatever it is that they're bickering about and what have you. And, either that or just getting told repeatedly, like, Daddy, I think you need some, we're going to get you some, what was it? Like some fragrance. Oh, why is that, Lily? Because your breath smells. Like, oh, my breath stinks. And she'd be like, yeah, kids are brutal. Like, they're just, they keep you on your toes. But like, having that time where it could be just, say, Vic and I, and like, we've got times where we've been hung out in places like New Orleans, or out, like, we've hung out in Vegas, or, getting to be in New York at the time of her birthday. That's awesome opportunities, and do it while you can, because you're only young once. Do you know what I'm saying? So get out there and just explore. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's take those opportunities while you can, because there's no doubt in my mind that and I've been told this by a lot of people from the older generations, is like, the times come where, like, that's no longer possible. So just make the most out of life while it's there, and just get out and enjoy yourself. Don't be afraid to go on an adventure and get out and explore. So, yeah, the past few years have been great. We've been able to travel together. We've been able to, we both love wrestling. Like, so it's, been awesome that we've been able to live this dream together. And it's like I said, it's been a dream.
It's incredible. I'm glad I've asked you that. I wanted to know about that. And I've heard great things about the two of you at meet and greets and stuff like that with the fans. I hear nothing but, like, amazing stuff. And, that's amazing. That's amazing. As you alluded to earlier, some of the wrestlers aren't great with the fans, are they? Yeah. But it's... Yeah,
well, man, like, look, like I said, like, without the fans, like, there isn't a wrestling business at all. So, and... I'd hate for anybody to meet me and think, oh, well, he was a dick. Do you know what I mean? So, like, it's, I've purposely not met some of my heroes because, like, I've heard potentially bad things, and I'm like, I don't want to, like, meet somebody and then, like, find out they're an arsehole or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, that can you don't realize like how much that can like crush somebody inside and put them off. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, everybody's going through something. Everybody's fighting an inner battle or an inner struggle that you aren't aware of. And the least you can do is just be a nice person. Is just be a good person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was having this conversation with Vic the other day. I was like, she was asking me why it is I, you know, say do certain nice things for people. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I see somebody like, you know, trying to take something, you know, I was at services the other day and I saw a girl like struggling taking a trolley through a door. So I just ran over, held the door open for her. I was like, let me get that for you. She goes through, you know what I mean? Like, and she's like, you know, why is it that you do all these things? I was like, look, if everybody on this planet just did one nice selfless act for somebody else on a day-to-day basis, how much of a difference would that make to everybody else? Do you know what I mean? Like, if everybody just did one good thing for somebody else without expecting anything back, do you know what I mean? Like, the world would be such a better place. And it just feels like, you know, if you're not purposely trying to make something better, then, you know, you're unintentionally making it worse. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, just get out there and just, you know, be a good person. Like, it's really not that hard to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not hard to help somebody out when they need help, or just to be, you know, just to, you know, say hello or like good morning or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, when you're on a walk or whatever, like, you know, too often people kind of keep their heads down and keep themselves to themselves. And, you know, I've been that person before as well. And, you know, it doesn't give me any sense of gratification thinking like, you know, well, if I've been, you know, if somebody's caught me on the wrong day or whatever, and I've put a complaint into, you know, somebody got my coffee order wrong or something, like that doesn't give you the right to be a dick to them. Do you know what I mean? Just, you know, be nice, you know, like explain it. And, you know what I mean? Like, somebody will help you out. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to purposely go out there and be an arsehole. Like, I remember when I was learning to drive, like one thing that my driving instructor said, like, just if you let somebody go, they'll do something nice for somebody else. Do you know what I mean? And it happens. We've got a T-junction at the end of our road, which is hard to get out of each morning. And, you know, like if somebody lets you out, like, you're more inclined to let somebody else go like a bit further down the road where there's a traffic light and somebody needs to turn. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if, you know, how easy is it that if everybody's an arsehole to you, that you're like, well, I'm not letting you go because nobody was nice to me, get used to it. Do you know what I mean? And then it just puts negativity out there and just pushes it forward. I don't want to live in a world where like negativity is, you know, like carries on as much as it does. Like, and unfortunately you can't change a lot of things, but like I said, if everybody could just do one good selfless act for somebody else, like, the world would be a much better place. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, just be conscious and be cautious of how you act and how your actions affect others.
It's just little things, and it's just little things like that, Mark, isn't it? As you know, you're saying, I've been guilty of it. I can't speak to that person, but I do say, you know, don't have your head down. You know, hold your head up. I was guilty of it. I was guilty of it for years. But like you say, it's just little thing, little life lessons, isn't it? I suppose. Yeah,
I'm becoming an old man now, dude. I'm getting there. So this is this is some kind of like grandpa sounding stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Hey,
like,
I'm 2 years. I'm 2 years older than you, believe it or not.
I'm a lot older. I've had a very harsh paper round. Do you know what I
So,
mean?
you've gone around the world with it though, and that's testament to you and the drive and determination. And I'm sure there's a lot of young guys now training. They're going to take so much away from this. Before we go, one last thing. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know time's precious. Off the top of your head now, fan perspective, when you were a kid, when you're watching it from 9 years old and onwards, a favourite match. I know that's hard. I get asked all the time, and I have to keep it down to 3. I could do 50 favourite matches. A Mount Rushmore, I couldn't do a Mount Rushmore either. I know guys like to do that. But yeah, maybe a match or two that comes to mind.
So a match or two, I would say. One match that I loved was Rock Triple H Backlash 2000, right? Because they take you on this emotional roller coaster throughout where, I mean, if you want to see wrestling psychology in its most perfect, like an almost seamlessly, you know, like flawless way, it is this, right? They build everything up to a point where, like, you know, at the point where the good guy is in the greatest piece of jeopardy, the greatest state of jeopardy, things switch like that, and watch how the fans react. Just listen to the reactions from the moment that you hear glass shatter onwards. Like, every reaction gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just the happiest go home sequence that I feel like I've ever witnessed, right? Like, it phenomenal, like, just incredible. And the great thing as well is, like, the match is relatively basic. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just they speak in a language that everybody can understand. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just a great story told to perfection. And another great match I feel as well is Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio, Halloween Havoc 97. I love watching that match. I think it's a polar opposite to the Backlash match in the sense of, like, it's just incredible action, and I feel like it's action way ahead of its time. Do you know what I mean? And it's those are definitely, I feel like, two matches that anytime that I feel like I want to remember what it is that I love about wrestling, they'll be the two matches that I'll put on and I'll watch.
Opposite ends of the spectrum there, which great, absolutely great. Mark, where can the viewers and listeners find you in terms of the socials?
At This Is Haskins on pretty much everything, and then www.thisishaskins.com for all your Haskins merchandise needs.
Perfectly done there. I like that. Nice and concise. We got it all in. My guest, UK wrestling royalty in my mind. I don't bestow that on everybody, by the way. No, I mean it. You've been around for so long, and I'm not blowing smoke up your arse just because we're on together. I would tell you this off camera as well.
You were really horrible to me before the interview started. Everyone knows. Hey, he's putting on a face now.
It's a facade. Mark. I'm telling you.
Know how to work the game, mate. That's it.
Ring of Honor talent, Mark Haskins. I'm just so glad that you've signed on. In the last 3 months as well, you've signed back on. We're going to get to see more matches, and unbelievable. And it gives us a lot of pride seeing you doing so well. Now I know a lot of guys who've watched it for years, and obviously young Kyle that you did a shout out for pre-interview. He is you're his favorite. You're his favorite wrestler. Absolutely. So
kid's got good taste.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Take care.
The fantastic Mark Haskins there. As you've heard, he's had quite the career. He's wrestled all over the world. I could have had him on for 3 or 4 hours. I'm sure somewhere down the road we could maybe get him on again for a second time, because there's just so much more I wanted to ask. But you've got to think of time constraints and stuff of that nature. But yeah, what hasn't Mark done? At the end of the day, I think what you take away from that is it's about caring about what you do. If you don't care about it, it's going to come across, isn't it? So yeah, I took away a lot from what Mark had to say about his career in there. And we will be back next week with another episode of Stu's Wrestling Podcast. A big thank you to Rich and John at Powered 4 TV for all their help. Thank you for allowing me to be in association with you guys. Lots on demand there. Also, a big thank you to Evade Escape for the music in the intro, and you're going to hear it in the outro as we go out. And also, a big thank you to Chris Dutton for editing, making everything look slick and amazing. And we will see you next week for episode 82 of Stu's Wrestling Podcast.